And this is the final result of a men's faded haircut. Stay tuned for this haircut. Hello, beautiful Hair Lounge community. My name's Angelina and we're in the Hair Lounge. Today, it's all about the men in your lives, or you guys out there that are watching this. I am going to break down how to use clippers to cut your own hair or have someone that you know cut it for you. Stay tuned and I will show you how to do it. So first, let's discuss what tools you will need. You will need your clippers, a T-edger, then these are all of the combs going from biggest size all the way down to your smallest. I like to set them up that way you know the sizes and they're in the correct order. Then you're going to need your lubricating oil. That's to make sure your clippers will be able to cut efficiently and does not pull hair. Then you will also need your scissors, a spray bottle, and a comb. Before I actually start showing you how to cut your hair or have someone else cut your hair, let's talk about your clippers first. So these are my Andis clippers, and all of these combs fit on these clippers, but you need to make sure while you're doing it, you are getting the comb evenly on the clipper. So for example, you can see this edge right here. It is not on your clipper right. So you need to make sure you're putting it on the right way so it fits snug. Then you want to make sure before you actually start cutting hair, you're going to be using this oil on your clippers. So whenever you hold your clippers up, you're going to add oil. You look on the inside of your blade on each edge and then turn your clippers on. That way it gets oil all over those blades and those blades will cut very, very clean. You wanna make sure if you've ever used your clippers before, you're using that little brush that comes with your clippers to clean all of the hair out, because if there's any hair in there, that'll stop your clippers actually from being able to cut. So now you need to decide what clipper guards you're going to be using. You want to make sure you are going longer first before you go shorter. It's always easier to go back and cut more hair, but the biggest mistake amateurs make is they go with the shortest guard first and normally go straight down the middle, and you can't go back and fix that. So make sure you go long first. So what you can do to know where you need to start is you're going to, this is my longest one, this is to leave 1 inch, just kidding, this is the one that is going to leave 1 inch left on your head. So this is 1 inch. So whenever you hold it up to your hair, say I'm a guy or a girl that likes a clipper cut, you're gonna hold it up to your hair. If you can see hair poking out while you run this up your scalp, that means it is going to actually cut the hair. So you wanna gauge it off of one that's gonna just take a little bit off of it. This would be the first one you start with if you see just a tiny bit of hair poking out. If you're liking what you see so far, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. That way you don't miss anything. All right, back to the clipper guards. A lot of times, guys, the normal clipper guard that you're going to be using is a number 2. So the number 2 leaves a quarter. Let's see if we can see that. You can see the little number thing right there. A 1/4 of an inch left on your head. You will see scalp with this. So if you do not like to see scalp at all, you need to go up a little bit higher. I always suggest start at the nape of your neck at the very, very back with that longest guard, just to make sure you don't mess up. Then you're going to transition to the next guard down. So once you use your 1 inch, then you're going to remove that off your clippers and you're gonna move on to your next guard, which is 3/4 of an inch. And that way you can gradually start making things shorter. If you are a visual learner, stay tuned because I'm going to actually show you how you're going to start using these clippers on your hair or someone else's hair. Hit the like button now if you like what you see. All right, guys, here we go. Let the fun begin. My model is going to be my lovely husband, Matt. He's being a trooper and letting me cut his super shaggy long hair. And I will also show you how to incorporate, if you do have facial hair or a beard, into your haircut. Stay tuned for this haircut. Okay, this is my husband, Matt.
Hi.
And we are going to cut his hair. He has kind of crazy, wild, straight hair, and it's super, super long. So this will be a good time to show you guys how to actually cut a guy's hair. So I told you, whenever you start, you need to make sure you start with the longest guard. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do that now. When I was telling you guys about the guards, this guard is the 1/2 inch guard. And so when you're going through their hair, this is barely cutting those little hairs that are on his head. So this is the guard that I would start with when you are going to start your cut. Start with the longest guard first. This is guard number 4, or like I said, the 1/2 inch guard. I will tell you, I had to wash his hair because he was wearing a hat. So you need to make sure before you cut your husband's hair or whoever's hair, you need to have them wash it. Because if they have been wearing a hat or it's bed head, you're gonna have uneven length. So you need to make sure it's freshly washed. So 1/2 inch guard, and you're just gonna go over the top of the fade first. And this is just to remove those tiny hairs that it's barely cutting off of his head. So for Matt's hair, he likes his hair very short. And so we normally do 0 guard, and this is a 000 clipper. And he likes it as short as you can get it on the very bottom of his hair. So that's where I'm gonna start. So the 1/2 inch guard is just a guide to know how high you can go up on your guard. So now since he likes the 000, this is what I'm gonna start with, and always start on the back. It's easier to fix if you mess up if you're starting on the very back bottom section. While you're doing the passes, you want to make sure you are going in different directions. Not going this one. So I like to call it a W shape. So you're going kind of to the right with it, and then you're cross-checking your cut going the opposite way. This ensures you don't have any random long pieces. As you can see, I'm doing short strokes to ensure I'm not getting a ton of hair in the clipper, so I make sure all that hair is getting cut. If you go one long strip, all these tiny teeth right here, you're gonna leave long spots. So the shorter strokes you do, the better it is. And one tip, you can see he has, this is his occipital bone, or kind of the bone that protrudes on his scalp. And you can see this dark spot right here. Whenever you see dark, that means it's longer. So I'm gonna have to go over that section again to make sure that that hair gets cut. And whenever someone has a bone or their head shape's a little bit different and you're seeing that dark spot, it does help if you pull their skin tight, and that's going to ensure you're cutting the actual hair. Again, going in different directions to make sure we're getting that hair actually cut. So as you can see, it softened that super dark spot. Now we're going to continue this all the way around. Like I said, he does like his hair fairly short, so his fade is going to be up higher, but you just gauge it off of what the person that you're cutting, where they want their fade to be. So for Matt's, he likes it up pretty high, but you do not have to do that. So now a tip, when you're going around the ear, you can push their ear forward. Some people have stiffer ears than others, but you can just push it, fold it down, and then you're able to get right behind that ear. Don't forget, if you like what you're seeing, hit that subscribe button right now. If the person you're cutting has facial hair, you're going to stop the fade or not take the clipper super far into their beard. You stop right about at the top of their ear. Now, as you can see, I'm doing a lot of passes over the top of the hair. That is to be sure you're cutting every single hair. At-home haircuts, that's normally the biggest problem, is you'll see all these tiny long hairs after a haircut, and it's because you didn't go over the actual haircut enough times. So just make sure you're taking those clippers in all different directions. So this is where we're getting to the tricky part. As you can see, this is going to be right where we start to actually fade his hair and start switching our clipper guards. But what I like to do is to get some of that hair removed out of the hair, I take a comb. And that's going to get all those tiny little hairs you've been cutting so you can actually see the fade a little bit better and have a true look of where his line is. So that kind of softened all that random dark stuff in there because he had loose hairs in there. So if you just comb those out, it helps so you can see the fade a tiny bit better. And as you can see right here, he has a dark spot. So we're going to go ahead and go over the top of that a little bit more. So we have the baseline of his haircut now. And so I'm going to turn him forward so you guys can see the front of his head. And when you look at it, you want to make sure your fade stops at the same spot. Obviously, we're going to be fading him more, so I'm just looking to make sure his fade is even and the shortest length goes and stops at the same spot on his head. Looks good. So now we're going to go to the next length. So with my clippers, I actually have a metal guard on mine. So whenever I switch out to my next length, I actually have to take this whole thing off. Your clippers, if you have clippers that you've bought at a store, they're not going to be like this. You're going to still use that plastic guard. And then my OA is the next length. So we're going to attach that. So now while I'm fading, I am just trying to remove, you can kind of see a faint line right here. Now it's time to blend. So I'm going to be blending that line in. That's why you switch to the next guard, because this guard is just a hair longer than the other guard. And as you can see, it just softens that line so then you don't see that line in his hair anymore. Now, this is where you're gonna start going into the facial hair as well. So he has the line from his beard right here, and we're gonna take this next length and we're just going to angle our clipper guard on the side of his head just to soften that line. So we blended that line in. You never want lines in haircuts, so you want to make sure that it blurs into the next length. Now we're going to move on to the other side. So now that we have finished blurring that line, we are going to take off my clipper guard and go back to the previous 000 guard. And this 000 is going to allow me to use my plastic guards. So my next length up is 1/16, which is this guard right here. So we're going to attach that, and this is mostly going to be to blend in his beard and then maybe 1/4 of an inch up on this fade, because we don't want to take too much into his hair because he does like this length a tiny bit longer. Now I'm gonna go into this actual section of his haircut, and like I said, it's just to blur the line. I'm not fading him up super high. Just like that. So as you can see, it's just slowly starting to blend together. Now we're gonna move on to his facial hair. So he likes this length, about 1/8 of an inch, which is the next size up. So 1/8 of an inch, or also a number 1. And we are gonna just do this all over his beard. With facial hair, since the hair is a little more wiry looking, you do need to go in tons of different directions just to make sure you can get all those hairs trimmed. You can also use a comb to kind of get the hairs going in the right direction. When I'm pulling up on his skin right here, it's because he has a very strong bone structure right here. And so it kind of protrudes a little bit. So when I pull it up, it moves that hair up above that, so it's easier to cut. Now his beard is all finished, and now we're going to move into the rest of the fade on this section of his hair. So remember, when we first originally started his haircut, we used the number 4 or the 1/2 inch guard, and we are going to go back to this to start blending in this shelf. So his hair, since his hair is super straight, you can kind of see it pokes out and sticks over the top of it. So this is what we're gonna use to blend that in. I'm gonna take the clipper guard and just do it straight at an angle on the side of his head, just to get rid of that shelf on his head. That's a good look right there. You can see that shelf. With his hair, I like to hold up the long stuff and let the stuff that I'm going to be cutting fall down. See, so it just softened that so it's not so shelf looking, which is kind of funny because there is a shelf right there. Now it's time to cut the top. So before I start cutting the top, I do like to get rid of all of this extra hair that we have everywhere. I use my blow dryer. You can use a towel to dust them off. This just helps because I'm going to use water, and so if you spray all over and then it gets on this hair, it's really hard to get the hair off of them when it's wet. Now we're going to spray everything with our water and comb it. The biggest thing is you do want it to be fairly wet. If some of the hair is dry and the rest is wet, you're gonna get various lengths because wet hair stretches and dry hair obviously stays where it lays. And so if you're cutting and you have too dry of spots, you're gonna get uneven lengths. So make sure that it's all completely saturated. Now that we got it all wet, we're gonna go through with our scissors. What I like to do is I like to start in the middle section, and I determine what length I'm going to actually have his whole haircut be. So it's been, I think we talked about it, I think it's been a month since we've cut his hair, and his hair grows really, really fast, so it's pretty long right now, but he is liking his top longer, right? So we are going to just probably take off, I wouldn't even say a half an inch, maybe a tiny bit less than a half an inch and a little bit longer than a quarter of an inch. So what's that? I don't know, but I like to take off enough down the middle, and then that's going to determine what these sides of how much I'm going to take off the sides. So I comb it all straight up into the middle, kind of like a little mohawk. And I always point cut. Point cut meaning you're going in at an angle and you're not going straight across. The reason I do this is it gives it a softer end look, and when he styles his hair, he likes it a little bit messier, and so it gives it texture to his hair. So if you can point cut. It makes your haircuts look better. So we're going to roughly take about that much off. And we are going to do this all the way down the middle section. So you're combing everything up, making sure it is going straight up and down about 90 degrees off of his actual scalp. And this is what I just cut, and we are going to follow that as our guideline for the rest of it. There's my guideline. All the way back. So now that you have the guideline in there, now you're going to go horizontal. So I'm going to take all of this hair and I'm going to be able to see my guideline. So this middle section is what I already cut. And then you can see these sides are longer. So that is going to be what I'm going to cut off now. When you're taking your sections, you want your sections to be fairly small, maybe a half an inch deep. That way you're not getting various lengths, and I'll show you that in a second. So there's my middle section, and this is some of the hair that I cut with that number 4. So we're just gonna connect the two. And just take that all the way back. So one nice thing with Matt's hair, his hair stands straight up, so it's very easy to check. So we are going to respray again, because like I said, if any of it's dry, it's gonna look like it's shorter than it actually is. Spray all of it. Then I like to comb everything straight up. So now we're gonna move on to kind of the curve or the sides of his haircut. And this is how you are going to blend in your fade. So we're gonna comb everything straight up, and we are gonna grab the short hairs that we did with the number 4 and blend in that top right side and take off his corner. So if I hold it straight out, you can see that corner right there where it's long, and we are just gonna blend that in all the way around his head. Still point cutting. While you're moving back, you're going in super, super small sections. So maybe a half an inch back each section. So I'm grabbing probably about a half an inch section of hair, and then I'm going back about a half an inch and then grabbing the next section. If you're grabbing too much hair at one time, you're gonna lose your guide. So you wanna make sure that it is small enough so you're not losing that guide. So right side down, now we're gonna move on to this left side. Blending in that top piece down into the bottom. So now that we blended those, again, I'm gonna comb everything straight up, and his hair is awesome because you can see if he has any long spots. So when I'm looking at his hair, I can tell that this corner right here, you can see that on camera, it's a tiny bit longer just right here, so I'm gonna go through and trim that a tiny bit more. For someone who has dark hair, it's nice to have a light background in the back so then that you can kind of see all those little hairs poking up and knowing where you have a long spot. Now we're going to cross check. So cross checking is just to make sure all those lines you did horizontally, you're checking the opposite way. Making sure there's no random long pieces in there. Okay, I'm gonna take a dry towel and I'm gonna get all this hair off of his face. With Matt, since we do his hair super short, it's not super necessary for us to do this, but not everybody does a zero fade. But this is when you are going to take your T-edgers and you're gonna clean up their neckline. So for him, as you can see, it's pretty much a bald fade. So he doesn't really have a whole lot, but we don't like any hair sticking out from his shirt, or, you know, if we miss any kind of the fuzzy things around his ears. So we're gonna take these T-edgers and just fade it in. If your guy does have hair, this is where you're going to follow their hairline. Some people do not like super square hairlines, so meaning they don't want it to look like a box straight up and down. So when they don't want it to look like a box, you round off their corners. Or if they like the square look, you can just go straight 90 degree. Like I said, for him, he doesn't have a whole lot there, so I just make sure he doesn't have any fuzzy guys that are a little bit longer that I did not get with the clippers. And also, if you do not do this short, they're gonna need it around their ear. So like I showed you with the clippers, just push their ear down, take the edge of the T-edger and go around their ear. You can pull their ear back, so that way it gets a little bit closer on the front of the ear. And don't forget the other side. All right, final look, you guys. He styled his own hair, so I can't take credit for that, but I can take credit for the haircut. All right, you guys, seems hard, but really isn't that hard once you get the hang of changing your clipper guards and just making sure you take your time. It's pretty easy. I think you guys would be able to do this. Thanks for stopping in, and we will see you guys next time. See you later.